So very good afternoon to you. Welcome to the West Ham Voice. I was going to do a preview on the Burnley game. I'm pretty useless at doing previews, to be quite honest with you. And so I thought, well, why not just catch up on the latest transfer news? Because there's a lot of stuff happening at the moment, a lot of stuff going on in the background that some is good, some not so good. But it does have an impact on the lineup for Sunday, who we're going to have on the bench, who we're going to have in the starting lineup. And let's start off with the obvious one, because that is, of course, Arne Engels. We've been waiting to hear whether Engels has been confirmed as a West Ham player before the midday deadline on Saturday. But unfortunately, that's not the case. He will be announced as a West Ham player later on today, but he's not made it in time. We've not managed to sign him up in time for him to make his debut against Burnley in our first game of the season on Sunday. Now, apparently, the reason being is that it's international clearance and visas, which has kind of held up the situation. Now, that sounds a little odd because Engels has been playing in the Scottish League. So you wonder, well, what international clearance does he require? But it seems that every FA requires, has to be international clearances to be gotten when you move to another FA. Of course, he's moved from the Scottish to the English FA. And that's the reason being. That sounds odd to me, but there you go. What we know is there's Engels has passed his medical. He will be announced as a West Ham United player sometime later today, but unfortunately not in time for the game against Burnley on Sunday. And then we kind of got these other issues going on in the background as well. We're hearing a little bit about Edson Alvarez, and apparently there's a rumor that he may not be available for the game on Sunday either. But this seems to be down to the fact that his agent is pushing for a move elsewhere. We don't quite know whether the player himself wants to play or doesn't want to play. He played last weekend against Portsmouth. So we just imagine that, well, whilst he's a West Ham United player, then Nuno is going to make use of him. So I'm kind of expecting Alvarez to be part of the team tomorrow. But it won't surprise me if last minute he's not. And I know that sounds vague, but unfortunately, that's about as good as what we're getting at this moment in time. And a similar sort of situation with Malick Diouf. We hear that apparently the player himself wants to leave, but West Ham, with Alvarez, by the way, West Ham United have slapped a 20 to 22 million pound price tag on him. If anybody wants him and they're willing to pay that sort of money, West Ham United will let him go. And I like that because we're not pissing around anymore. We're not allowing other clubs to bully us. And I think what's happening and what we'll see happen as the transfer window comes to a close is that the players that we're trying to move on, the clubs that want them, will eventually start messing us around, offering us low ball bids as they've been doing, and thinking that at the end of the transfer window we'll be desperate enough to let them go for next to nothing. I hope we don't. I hope there are players that we want to let go of course, and I'll show you when I put up the team, my predicted team lineup, who those players are. But I hope we hold our ground and stand our ground and don't allow players to go for nothing. We've had that so many times before. We're in no mood to continue doing that. Malick Diouf, apparently he will stay. We put a 50 million pound price tag on its head, so if anybody wants him, they're going to have to stump up that sort of money. And it shows determination from Nuno. Nuno wants him to stay as part of the squad, and he wants him to be in the team. Now, my lineup against Burnley, what I've gone for is Mads Hermansen in goal. Now, let me explain briefly why Hermansen played in goal against Portsmouth in the Cup last weekend. We've become accustomed to having a goalie for the Cup runs and goalie for the league. Now, apparently, Areola is another player that we're actually trying to move on. But unfortunately, just like most of the players that we've got in our squad, Areola's on a big wage. He was on 120 grand a week, which means half that is 60 grand a week, which means it's still not sustainable, still a big amount of money for the Championship. But that's why he didn't play last weekend. Now, one could argue, well, then why not put Herrick as our backup goalkeeper rather than Areola? I think the answer is pretty simple there, isn't it? Because Areola is the more experienced, just in case we really do need him. Anyway, that was the reason why Hermansen played in goal against Portsmouth last weekend in the Cup. So Hermansen in goal, Carl Walker-Peters at right back. I'm actually putting Malick Diouf in into the starting lineup, but I won't be surprised if Ollie Scholes retains his place against Burnley on Sunday. And then, of course, you've got Kilman and Dinos at the centre backs, and I'm putting Alvarez in. Now, it won't surprise me if James Ward-Prowse ends up starting there. See how vague everything is at this moment in time. So with Malick, it won't surprise me if Scholes starts instead of Malick. And with Alvarez, it won't surprise me if James Ward-Prowse starts in his place. But I'm putting Alvarez in at this moment in time. Alongside Kante and Pablo, Solomon will get his debut for West Ham United, Bone on the right, and then, of course, Tati Castellanos up front. And then you look at the bench, we've really only got 3 players there with any experience: Areola, Veltman, and James Ward-Prowse. And then the rest of the bench is made up. They're good youngsters, promising youngsters like Mars, like Scholes, like Gollum Beckis, Earthy, I'm not too sure about, Lewis Orford, and then Josh Ajala. But we need more players. So you look on the right-hand side. I'm going to talk about Magassa in a moment. But you look on the right-hand side, you've got Cornet, who we can't get rid of for love nor money. You've got Fulkrug, and we've got Todibo, that there are teams interested in them. But again, not wanting to pay the money. Aaron Wan-Bissaka looks like he's on his way to Aston Villa. We know we've got Souček and La Madrid injured. And I've put Engels there, although Engels can't start tomorrow or can't be on the bench. But Engels is at least coming in. Got Herrick, we've got Casey on the bench. Now, let me move on to Magassa, because the next story about a player potentially leaving is Songutu Magassa. This disappoints me somewhat, but apparently he's cleared his Instagram of all West Ham United related stuff, and it looks as if he's on the way out. Now, surely this is the kind of player that we've been looking to buy in order to sort of, young, sort of like, a player that can still develop. We bought him for not a lot of money when you consider it in the Premier League. I thought we'd keep him. I'm really kind of surprised, of the players that we're looking to sort of move on for whatever reason, that Magassa's in there. We got rid of Potts, which I didn't think was a necessarily good idea. Magassa, we thought, well, okay, we've got Magassa, but he's another central defensive midfielder that looks like he's moving on. Got Alvarez with a big question mark over his head. So what are we going to do with all these young players, with all these central defensive midfielders all leaving? Well, the first story, apparently, is that we're interested in Patrick Berg. Now, I don't mind this. Decent enough player. Let me see if I've got his details up, if I've not deleted it. Patrick Berg, Norwegian international. We saw him in the World Cup, and apparently there's interest. He currently plays for Bodo Glimt. Now, this story has come from Football Insider, and I'm not very much a fan of Football Insider. I'm not so sure where they get the information from. Every time I ask, how credible Football Insider is, I keep being told not very. So, look, I can only tell you what I've got in front of me. But apparently, Football Insider claims Bodo Glimt's defensive midfielder, who started in the World Cup for Norway, has emerged as one of the players that West Ham United are interested in. And the reason why I've included him is because of Niels Koppen. We know Niels Koppen knows an awful lot about the Norwegian market, about the Belgian market, Scandinavian markets, etc. So I'm not surprised if we're interested in him. And given how many players, like I said, defensive midfielders that could be leaving, then he could be a really, really good addition to West Ham United. Now, the report says that West Ham are interested, but Bodo Glimt want to keep the player, or happy to keep the player. Let me rephrase. They're happy to keep the player. The player is happy to stay. However, there's a lot of interest in him. And if a big bid comes in, then they will be interested in maybe pursuing that. So, look, he's the sort of player that quite potentially, if we're getting rid of all these central defensive midfielders, is a player that I think sounds like a decent player to target. Now, we're told, we keep getting various rumours that Real Betis are interested in Troy Parrott, but we're told that Real Betis cannot afford him. So he's been kept out, and apparently he's going to be kept out of the squad against Utrecht. Now, that doesn't start till later on Saturday evening, so I'm not 100% sure. But at this moment in time, the stories go that he's being kept out of the squad, the AZ Alkmaar squad, to play Utrecht this evening. So if he is, it looks like they're prepared to the fact that he's going to be going. He's on his way out. And West Ham United are in the right. They're the first team to be. They're the team that apparently have got the biggest interest in him, and we're, from all the reports that we hear, we're way ahead of everybody else to sign him. I like him. I think he's a player a player that's been developing, that could be really good for us. But time is running out, isn't it? I know we've now got we've got Solomon in, we've got Veltman in, and we've also got Engels in. But Parrott has got to be the next one. If we get another central a striker and a central defender, I think we're kind of done. But then I start worrying about all the other players that we're sort of losing on the periphery. We know we're going to lose Fulkrug and Wan-Bissaka and Todibo, but now Magassa as well, and maybe Alvarez, and maybe Malick as well. There's quite a lot of players that we could be losing. Now, other players that we're interested in, I talked about Alspo the other day, a player that said, West Ham United are a cool club, etc., etc. A young 21-year-old winger who looked really quite sharp in if you look at some of the clips that are out on YouTube at the moment. So we're interested in him. So let's see what happens there. But another player that's come up over the last sort of 24 hours is yet another young winger. Let's see if I can find his. There we are. Another young winger called Daniel Job. Now, let's me read the story about Daniel Job. Apparently, he currently plays for Norwegian club Kongsvinger. I think that's right. So again, a Norwegian team. Again, why I think this has got Nils Koppen written all over it. 20 years of age. He's got 7 goals and 8 assists in 16 appearances for Kongsvinger. He hasn't been playing that long. They're in the second division of the Norwegian league, by the way, the Norwegian second league. Apparently, he's outgrown the division with a transfer on the cards this summer. And while he's not exactly a well-known name, teams are sitting up and taking notice. So he's had about 6 months playing in the first team, and all of a sudden he's beginning to get noticed by team. Look, £4 million is the rumoured price tag on this player. And I'm glad we're going for them. I'm glad, well, if we are going for them, that's all very well. But I'm just worried about, we're looking at wingers, and great about Berg, who's a central defensive midfielder, and great about Troy Parrott, who's a striker, but and great to have these wingers as backup, which is another good thing. I'd rather go for one of these youngsters, Outspo or Job, rather than Reece Nelson, who's injury prone, and as I keep saying, on his wages, I doubt very much we'll be able to even afford him, even if he is going for £3 million. So going for these youngsters is great, but I'm just worried about all these players that seem to be leaving West Ham United. Nuno said in his press conference on Friday, we need more players. We need more bodies. He admitted that we need more players coming into West Ham. If we're going to lose Fulkrug, I'm expecting, Wan-Bissaka, I'm expecting, Todibo, I'm expecting. I'm not even including them. But if we're now going to lose Alvarez on top of that, if we're also going to lose Malick Diouf as well, then you start to sort of think about where are we heading, as a club, and are we going to be able to? If we lose Malick, are we going to be able to get another left back in good time? I don't know. If we lose Alvarez, okay. The fans are 50-50 on him, saying he's a liability anyway. He's a big hindrance to the team because of the bookings that he gets anyway. But maybe if we do have an interest in Patrick Berg, I see there's like for like coming in. But we still need a central defender. We're still waiting on Disasi, like I talked about the other day, and whether he'll come or not. There's so much to do in the last 2 weeks of this transfer window. And I think fans are panicking a little bit. I'm panicking a little bit. The more I see players leaving than coming in, the more I'm going to panic until we get to the end of this transfer window and see where we are. Look, Burnley tomorrow, let's go back to this lineup. What I think is going to happen, I think it's going to be Hermansen in goal, Walker-Peters, Dinos, Kilman, and possibly Malick, but won't surprise me if Skulls retains his place. I've got Alvarez in there, but it won't surprise me if James Ward-Prowse comes in instead. And then you've got Pablo, you've got Kante, you've got Solomon making his debut, Bowen on the right side, and Tati up front. It's not going to be an easy game. Look at what happened with Blackburn against Wolverhampton Wanderers just on Friday night, where Wolverhampton Wanderers had to get a very late penalty in order to get even in that game where it finished 2-2. And Blackburn are apparently a team that is looking at possible relegation. Well, they didn't look like a relegation team against Wolves on Friday night. Going to be a tough game. I'm going to do a prediction. I'm going to say we're going to win it. I'm not going to give you a I'm going to say 1-0 because that's typical Nuno. But if we can get through that and then get some of these players in for the next game that we've got at home, I think it's against Charlton, then I'll be a little bit happier. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. It's been a whirlwind of an update, but I hope you enjoyed it. And if you have, all you've got to do is click on this QR code that's appearing in the top corner there. If you enjoy the content, just become a subscriber. It doesn't cost anything to subscribe. Can't even say it. Subscribe to the channel. I'll see you all again soon. I'll be on my way to Burnley tomorrow, so there'll be updates. If I get any early team news, I'll give you that. I'll give you any updates that we've got during the game. If we score a goal, I'll put it up on my YouTube channel as well. And then there'll be a post-match review. No Wiggy, no shirts, because he's not able to make it tomorrow. So I'll be doing a review with anyone else I see there.